In March 2022, a team of researchers joined Hlankomo villages in the Eastern Cape of South Africa for 3 days of co-creation workshops to research the reinforcing systemic socio-ecological vulnerabilities of pastoralist communities in the former homelands of South Africa. The process involved 2 days of workshops, which were attended by 40 to 50 people, as well as 1 day of focus group discussions and consolidation with 10 to 15 people from the previous day. The villages were livestock owners and local community groups directly impacted by climate change, as well as traditional leadership structures, local NGOs, schools, and education centers, who all operate within the system that is impacted by the burning issue. All stakeholders were invited to discuss the problem statement. Over the years, climate change has affected how we live our lives. Quite often, these changes are uncertain, and the impacts and effects are unique for each community. Therefore, it is important for Hlankomo village to come together to learn and understand these effects and the challenges to be overcome. Day 1 and 2 sessions kicked off with traditional processes and introductions to the team. We then moved into breakout groups for initial insights into the problem statement. The whole session was conducted in isiXhosa, but each group had a dual language facilitator to help the researchers understand. The research team then screened an introduction to climate change at a global level, which was produced by a South African news group.
Lephephandaba i-SSY Daily Mail elashicilelwa kwiminyaka ekwisithuba sama-40 eyadlulayo. Ngelishwa ke, iinzululwazi zelizwe jikelele zinyanisile xa zivumelana ngokuba ngabantu ababangela ukuba iplanethi ibe nobushushu obungamandla.
This is bad. It's been calculated a few degrees rise in the Earth's temperature would melt the polar ice caps.
Ukuba ngaba umculo obungatsho ngqo khona.
It's bad, actually, it's very bad.
Kwaye ngonyaka ka-2019 siqaphele ukuba
Following this video, some people asked questions and shared their personal experiences with climate change. This footage was kindly shared by a village member and shows the real damage to lives caused by climate impacts such as fire. Other key climate impacts were found during discussions, which led into voting processes where every person could select 3 impacts that they believe are the most pressing climate impacts that the community is facing and will face in the future. Participants framed or situated themselves within the climate context through a timeline activity on day 1, and the whole room determined their collective key topics to be discussed in the remainder of this first session. The key topics ended up being fires, wattle, drought, storms, heavy rains, and floods. On the second day, we collectively reflected on day 1 and brought up any lingering points before unpacking the 4 key themes a bit more. We found that these 4 themes included a host of serious concerns, including damage to buildings and infrastructure, institutional instability, a lack of unity, a lack of government support, inequality regarding adaptive strategies, a greater reliance on social grants, increases in crime and domestic violence, especially gender-based violence. Women and youth were adapting by engaging in transactional sex, which leads to exposure to STDs and teen pregnancy. There was a loss of livestock, grasslands, crops, health impacts including death and disease, a loss of access to education and healthcare, human-wildlife conflict, food and water insecurity and related conflict, and overall safety and security concerns. During the voting processes on day 2, death linked to fires was ranked as the highest priority among all participants. However, some differences in priorities between men and women was also present, which was shown in our sex disaggregated data collection processes. While income and livelihood loss linked to drought was ranked as the highest priority among women, with 4 votes, death linked to fires was ranked as the highest priority among men, with 21 votes. Women's next 3 priorities in order of number of votes were, first, death linked to fire, second, less water linked to wattle, and third, less productive land linked to heavy rains. Men's next three priorities in order of number of votes were income and livelihood loss linked to drought, less productive land linked to heavy rains, and crime linked to wattle. After these findings were reported, we concluded Day 1 and Day 2 sessions. With the recognition that not everyone can attend 3 days of workshops, some key informants were asked to engage in deeper dive discussions on the topics covered during the previous days of workshops. These members included the local Induna, or headman, 2 eco-rangers, 2 women who attended the previous day's sessions, and members of the Livestock Association. Importantly, all communication channels are kept open with everyone who attended all of the workshops, through the ongoing work of Meet Naturally and Lima on the ground. During this third session, youth, gender, and institutions from both the past and present were discussed, as they were regularly brought up in the previous workshops.
Because they come with that and come here and take drugs and everything, and then people that are coming, they kind of like a defense mechanism to say, okay, anyway.
Some opportunities were also found, and these included an interest in establishing climate change champions within the community, revising and enforcing local and community bylaws, an interest in similar workshops to sit down and think deeply as a community about climate change, and a community-led production of climate change communication materials such as radio programs and book dashes. There is also a full research report available with all the findings, so please contact one of these team members for access to this report. Thank you to all funders and everyone who took part.